Behind the gilded gates of Buckingham Palace, a secret so explosive it threatened the very foundation of the British monarchy was about to be exposed. A mysterious leak whispered about in shadowed corridors and sealed in encrypted files sent shockwaves through the royal household. As panic gripped the crown, one question echoed across Britain: what was so dangerous that it forced a reigning king to make an unprecedented decision? It began not with a proclamation, but with a whisper. A quiet breach. A document slipping into the wrong hands. Within hours, the silence of the palace was shattered by an invisible tremor that rippled through its ancient halls. Senior aides received urgent calls in the dead of night. Phones buzzed behind locked doors. Eyes widened in disbelief. Something catastrophic had escaped the fortress of royal secrecy, and it was spreading faster than anyone could contain it. By dawn, media outlets were ablaze with speculation. Insiders spoke in hushed tones, hinting at revelations too sensitive to confirm yet too explosive to ignore. The leak, it was rumored, contained confidential documents that exposed fractures within the monarchy itself, deep-rooted tensions, hidden vulnerabilities, and emergency protocols never meant to see the light of day. These were not ordinary papers. They were the crown's most closely guarded contingencies, designed for moments of existential peril. Inside Buckingham Palace and Clarence House, an unspoken lockdown took hold. Meetings were abruptly cancelled. Corridors once alive with ceremonial calm turned tense and watchful. Loyal staff, sworn to discretion, moved with quiet urgency. Every whisper felt dangerous. Every shadow carried suspicion. The monarchy, an institution built on composure and continuity, was suddenly confronting chaos from within. Royal aides scrambled through the night, racing against time to contain the narrative before the morning headlines ignited a global scandal. Legal advisors were summoned. Communications teams drafted emergency statements. Security protocols tightened. Yet even as they worked, the rumors grew darker. Some claimed the leak threatened not only the reputation of the monarchy but the stability of the nation itself. Others whispered that its implications could ignite a constitutional crisis unlike anything Britain had witnessed in generations. Behind closed doors, senior courtiers convened in secrecy. Their expressions were grave, their voices measured but urgent. Words rarely spoken aloud echoed through private chambers' emergency powers, constitutional anomaly, national risk. The very language of crisis, once confined to contingency plans, was now being uttered as a terrifying reality. The unimaginable was no longer hypothetical. At the center of this gathering storm stood King Charles III. Known for his devotion to duty and reverence for tradition, he now faced a trial that threatened to eclipse all others. Those closest to him described a monarch deeply shaken, burdened by the weight of history and the fragility of the institution he had sworn to protect. For the first time in his reign, the crown itself seemed vulnerable. And yet, amid the uncertainty, one name surfaced repeatedly: Prince William. Calm, composed, and resolute, the heir to the throne emerged as a figure of quiet strength. As speculation intensified, whispers grew louder. The future of the monarchy might soon rest upon his shoulders. As speculation spiraled beyond control, the crisis forced King Charles to confront a decision that would redefine royal authority and alter the destiny of his heir forever. Inside the quiet, candlelit rooms of Buckingham Palace, King Charles III faced the greatest test of his reign. With the weight of centuries pressing upon him, the monarch found himself cornered by scandal, secrecy, and the looming threat of public upheaval. For the first time since ascending the throne, Charles was forced to confront an unthinkable question. Could he still protect the crown, or had the crisis already slipped beyond his control? The leak had not merely shaken the palace, it had pierced its very soul. For a man who had waited a lifetime to wear the crown, this was not the triumphant reign he had envisioned. Instead, it was a storm of uncertainty, one that threatened to tarnish both his legacy and the institution he had sworn to defend. The documents, whispered about in corridors of power, loomed over him like an accusation. Every revelation carried the potential to erode centuries of trust, and with each passing hour, the pressure intensified. Charles had always understood the burden of duty. It was a lesson etched into his existence from birth, shaped by discipline, sacrifice, and an unyielding sense of responsibility. Yet now that very devotion clashed with a haunting fear that despite his lifelong preparation, the monarchy itself might suffer irreparable damage under his watch. The crown was meant to endure beyond scandal, beyond crisis, beyond the frailties of those who wore it. But this moment felt perilously different. This felt existential. Advisors spoke with urgency, their words measured yet laced with dread. Public trust, they warned, was eroding at an alarming rate. The media storm was gaining momentum, and silence, once the monarchy's greatest shield, was becoming its greatest vulnerability. Rumors multiplied, speculation deepened, and with each passing headline, the monarchy's image trembled under the strain. The king listened intently, his composure unwavering, though those closest to him sensed the turmoil beneath the surface. Memories of past royal scandals lingered like shadows. The echoes of abdications, betrayals, and public controversies haunted the present, reminding him how fragile even the most enduring institutions could be. He had witnessed the monarchy endure heartbreak, scrutiny, and transformation, yet never had the stakes felt so personal. History was watching, and the judgment of generations weighed heavily upon him. The strain began to reveal its cost. Whispers circulated among palace insiders that the king's health was suffering under the relentless pressure. Sleepless nights blurred into anxious days. The weight of the crown, once symbolic, now felt tangible, unyielding, and unforgiving. Still, Charles pressed forward, determined to uphold the dignity of his office, even as the walls of certainty seemed to close in. Behind closed doors, confidential legal advisors presented him with unprecedented constitutional options. Their counsel was delivered in hushed tones, outlining measures that had rarely been contemplated, let alone enacted. Extraordinary powers, emergency contingencies. Each possibility carried consequences that could redefine the monarchy itself. To act would be historic. To hesitate could be catastrophic. Yet unity within his inner circle was fracturing. Some urged swift and decisive intervention, insisting that bold action was the only path to stability. Others cautioned restraint, warning that such measures could ignite controversy and deepen public skepticism. The divisions grew sharper, the debates more urgent, leaving the king isolated at the center of a storm that threatened to consume everything he held sacred. And so the question loomed larger than ever. Who could stabilize the crown when the king himself was under siege? The answer, once unspoken, began to crystallize with undeniable clarity. With the storm closing in, Charles turned to the one figure he believed could safeguard the monarchy's future, his eldest son, Prince William. As chaos threatened to engulf the monarchy, all eyes turned to the Prince of Wales. Calm, composed, and shaped by decades of preparation, Prince William stood at the threshold of destiny. But this was no ceremonial duty, it was a trial by fire. With the world watching and history hanging in the balance, William faced a defining moment that would test his courage, loyalty, and readiness to rule. The summons came without warning, urgent and unmistakable. It carried none of the formalities of tradition, only the weight of necessity. For William, the message was clear: the crown was in peril, and his presence was no longer optional, it was essential. As he answered his father's call, he stepped into a moment history had been quietly preparing him for since birth. Yet nothing could have fully prepared him for what he was about to hear. Behind closed doors, King Charles revealed the full magnitude of the crisis. The palace leak was not merely an embarrassment, it was a destabilizing force, capable of unraveling centuries of carefully guarded authority. Confidential files, whispered accusations, and hidden contingencies now threatened to expose vulnerabilities long buried within the institution. As each revelation unfolded, the gravity of the situation settled heavily upon William's shoulders. This was no longer about reputation, it was about survival. For a fleeting moment, the heir confronted the enormity of his fate. To accept responsibility meant stepping into unprecedented authority, a role that blurred the line between duty and destiny. It was a burden laden with risk, capable of redefining not only his future, but the very identity of the monarchy. The decision demanded not only courage, but conviction. And in that silence, heavy with consequence, William understood that history was calling his name. Unlike generations before him, his leadership bore the imprint of a modern era. Measured, pragmatic, and quietly resolute, he embodied a new vision of royalty, one grounded not in distance but in connection. Where tradition demanded caution, he offered clarity. Where secrecy bred suspicion, he embraced transparency. This contrast, subtle yet powerful, distinguished him from the rigid conventions of the past and positioned him as a bridge between legacy and progress. At his side stood Catherine, Princess of Wales, his confidante and unwavering source of strength. In moments of doubt, her calm resolve steadied him, reminding him of the values that had always guided their shared path: duty, compassion, and unity. Though the weight of the crisis threatened to isolate him, he was not alone. Her presence anchored him, reinforcing his resolve as he navigated the shadows of uncertainty. Beyond palace walls, public sentiment began to shift. Amid the swirling chaos, many saw in William a symbol of stability and renewal. His composure inspired confidence. His silence spoke of strength. As speculation mounted, so too did the belief that he represented the monarchy's best hope for survival. The nation watched, searching for reassurance in a moment defined by doubt. Yet beneath the calm exterior, tension simmered. Accepting extraordinary powers carried profound consequences. It risked controversy, scrutiny, and the burden of history's judgment. William wrestled with the enormity of the choice, aware that one misstep could fracture the institution he was sworn to protect. But hesitation was a luxury he could not afford. In that defining moment, clarity emerged. This was not merely a test of leadership, it was a crucible of legacy. To stand aside was to allow uncertainty to prevail. To step forward was to embrace destiny itself. And so, with quiet determination, Prince William resolved to protect the crown at any cost. Yet what Charles was about to entrust to his son would send shockwaves through the institution itself. Hidden within the monarchy's most guarded archives lies a contingency plan. Few have ever seen an extraordinary mechanism designed for moments of national peril. Known only to a select circle of insiders, these emergency powers were never meant to be invoked. But as the palace leak threatened to unravel centuries of tradition, King Charles faced the unthinkable, activating a royal protocol so secretive that its very existence was whispered like a legend. For generations, the British monarchy had thrived on continuity, discretion, and an unspoken understanding that some truths were never meant for public consumption. Beneath the ceremonial splendor and polished dignity lay a deeper reality, one shaped by contingency and foresight. In the shadows of royal history, long before Charles ever ascended the throne, plans had been crafted to protect the crown in moments of existential crisis. They were drafted in secrecy, sealed with absolute authority, and entrusted only to those sworn to preserve the institution at all costs. These were not myths or rumors, they were safeguards, dormant yet formidable, awaiting a moment of necessity that few believed would ever come. That moment had arrived. As the palace leak tightened its grip, confidential briefings unveiled the existence of clandestine emergency powers, extraordinary measures reserved for times when stability itself hung in the balance. These protocols, conceived in eras of war, political upheaval, and national uncertainty, were designed to ensure that the monarchy would endure even in the face of unprecedented threat. Their invocation was never intended for convenience or control, but for survival. And now, survival had become the crown's most urgent priority. Legal advisors spoke with measured gravity, outlining the extraordinary scope of these powers. Their words carried the weight of history, emphasizing the profound implications of such an action. To activate them would alter the constitutional landscape, granting Prince William the authority to oversee crisis management and stabilize royal operations at a time when confidence in the monarchy teetered on the brink. It was a move of immense consequence, one that blurred the line between tradition and transformation, between preservation and reinvention. Yet the very ambiguity of these powers ignited controversy within the palace walls. Constitutional uncertainties fueled whispers among insiders, sparking debates that were as intense as they were confidential. Critics warned of dangerous precedents, fearing public outrage and political tension if such authority became known. To them, the decision risked undermining the delicate balance between monarchy and modern democracy. The mere suggestion of extraordinary royal intervention threatened to ignite a firestorm of scrutiny. But loyalists saw something different. They viewed the protocol not as an overreach, but as a necessary shield and act of foresight designed to safeguard the integrity of the crown. To them, entrusting Prince William with such authority represented resilience, not desperation. It was a bold affirmation that the monarchy was capable of adapting to survive, guided by a steady hand and an unyielding sense of duty. At the heart of the decision stood King Charles III, burdened by the gravity of history and the urgency of the present. He understood that invoking these measures would mark one of the most unprecedented moments in modern royal history. It was not merely a constitutional maneuver, it was a defining act of leadership, one that would reshape perceptions of power, loyalty, and legacy. In William, he saw continuity. In William, he saw hope. And in that realization, the path forward became clear. And on a night cloaked in secrecy, father and son sealed a decision that would alter the course of the crown forever. Under the cover of darkness, the corridors of Buckingham Palace came alive with urgency. Behind closed doors and guarded by silence, a midnight meeting unfolded, one that would redefine royal power for generations to come. As King Charles prepared to pass unprecedented authority to his heir, the air trembled with history, sacrifice, and uncertainty. What transpired that night would remain hidden from the public, until now. Summoned by necessity rather than ceremony, the most trusted figures within the royal establishment gathered in secrecy. Senior advisors, constitutional experts, and loyal aides convened under an unspoken vow of silence, their presence confirming the gravity of the moment. These were individuals accustomed to discretion, yet even they sensed the enormity of what lay ahead. The monarchy, an institution that had endured wars, revolutions, and scandals, now faced an invisible threat from within, one capable of shaking its very foundation. The tension was suffocating, sharpened by the awareness that every decision made within those walls would echo across history. Words were measured, voices subdued, but the stakes were unmistakable. There would be no turning back. Each counsel offered, each argument weighed, carried the burden of permanence. This was not merely a discussion, it was a reckoning. The crown stood at a crossroads, and the choice before them would determine whether it emerged stronger or fractured beyond repair. At the heart of the assembly stood King Charles III, resolute yet visibly burdened by the magnitude of his duty. With unwavering composure, he revealed the emergency decree, an extraordinary measure forged in secrecy and reserved for moments of profound national peril. Its existence had long been known only to a privileged few. Now, it was to be invoked for the first time in modern history. And its authority was destined for one man alone, his eldest son and heir, Prince William. As the document was presented, an unmistakable silence settled over the room. William understood instantly that this was no ceremonial gesture. It was a summons to destiny. He hesitated not from doubt, but from the profound realization of what acceptance would demand. To assume such power meant stepping beyond tradition into uncharted territory, bearing the hopes of a monarchy under siege. It was a burden measured not in authority, but in consequence. In that moment, the emotional gravity between father and son deepened. Charles saw not only the future king before him, but the boy he had raised, now standing at the threshold of history. William, in turn, recognized the sacrifice in his father's eyes, a monarch compelled to entrust his legacy to the next generation, in a time of unprecedented crisis. Their shared silence spoke of trust, duty, and the unbreakable bond forged by destiny. Symbolism infused the exchange: a steady nod, a measured breath, a quiet acceptance that transcended words. These gestures, subtle yet profound, marked the transfer of responsibility and the continuation of an unbroken royal lineage. It was not merely authority being passed, it was faith in the endurance of the crown, and in the man chosen to protect it. With solemn resolve, the decision was finalized. The historic decree was signed, its ink sealing a moment that would forever alter the course of modern monarchy. In that instant, tradition yielded to necessity, and history bore witness to a transformation few would ever fully comprehend. But while the palace sought silence, whispers of the unprecedented move were already escaping beyond its walls. When news of the king's extraordinary decision surfaced, Britain erupted. From parliament to pub corners, from newsrooms to social media, the nation found itself gripped by disbelief. Supporters hailed Prince William as a beacon of stability, while critics questioned the implications of such sweeping authority. As the debate intensified, one truth became undeniable: the monarchy was facing its most polarizing moment in decades. The revelation broke like a thunderclap. What had been whispered behind palace walls now roared across headlines, igniting a storm that could no longer be contained. Broadcasters interrupted regular programming. Analysts scrambled to interpret the unprecedented transfer of authority. Speculation surged with breathtaking speed, transforming rumor into national obsession. For the first time in generations, the monarchy stood exposed to a level of scrutiny that threatened to redefine its role in modern Britain. Television studios buzzed with urgency as media outlets broadcast breaking reports of the king's extraordinary decree. Words such as historic, unprecedented, and controversial echoed across platforms, each carrying the weight of constitutional intrigue. Commentators dissected every detail, questioning the necessity and implications of granting emergency powers to the heir apparent. What had begun as a confidential crisis was now a global spectacle, commanding attention far beyond the palace gates. Constitutional experts entered the fray, their interpretations as divided as the nation itself. Some defended the move as a calculated act of preservation, an essential step to safeguard continuity in a time of peril. Others warned of dangerous precedents, arguing that such authority blurred the delicate boundary between ceremonial monarchy and political influence. The debate was fierce, complex, and relentless, transforming a royal decision into a constitutional crossroads. Across Britain, public opinion fractured with startling intensity. Loyalists rallied in defense of the crown, viewing Prince William as a steady hand capable of restoring confidence and stability. To them, the decision symbolized resilience and foresight. Skeptics, however, saw something far more troubling. They questioned whether the ancient institution had overstepped its bounds, fearing that secrecy and power were converging in ways that challenged democratic ideals. The nation was no longer united in quiet reverence, it was divided by doubt. Political leaders demanded answers. Calls for clarity and transparency echoed through the corridors of power, as lawmakers sought assurances that the unprecedented measure would not disrupt the constitutional balance. Statements were issued, inquiries proposed, and tensions escalated. Each demand intensified the pressure on the monarchy, amplifying the sense that Britain was witnessing a moment of profound historical consequence. Meanwhile, social media ignited with a ferocity unmatched by traditional discourse. Hashtags trended within hours, fueling speculation, conspiracy theories, and passionate declarations of support. Some hailed William as the embodiment of a modern monarchy, while others warned of hidden motives lurking beneath the surface. The digital age magnified every whisper, turning uncertainty into viral sensation and transforming the royal crisis into a global phenomenon. Beyond Britain's shores, international observers watched with astonishment. Foreign commentators dissected the unfolding drama, marveling at the resilience and vulnerability of one of the world's most enduring institutions. Allies expressed curiosity, critics voiced skepticism, and the global stage bore witness to a royal saga unfolding in real time. Amid the turbulence, Prince William's popularity surged, particularly among younger generations who saw in him a symbol of renewal. To them, he represented a monarchy capable of evolving without abandoning its legacy. Yet beneath the admiration lay a lingering tension, for the crown now stood at a precarious crossroads between tradition and transformation. Yet as the world reacted with shock, a darker truth about the original leak threatened to surface. Every scandal has a source, and within the palace walls, suspicion turned inward. As investigators closed in, a chilling reality emerged. The leak was not an accident, but a calculated betrayal. Hidden motives, secret alliances, and whispered resentments formed a web of intrigue. When the identity of the alleged insider finally surfaced, it sent shockwaves through the monarchy and shattered the illusion of unity forever. What began as a breach of security soon evolved into a hunt for truth. Quietly and without ceremony, a covert internal investigation was launched, shielded from public scrutiny and known only to a trusted few. Discretion was paramount. The monarchy could withstand external criticism, but betrayal from within threatened something far more dangerous: its credibility, its cohesion, its very soul. Each step toward uncovering the truth carried the risk of igniting an even greater crisis. As investigators sifted through encrypted communications, confidential records, and restricted access logs, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The leak was precise, calculated, intentional. It bore the unmistakable signature of someone deeply embedded within the institution, an individual with unprecedented access to its most guarded secrets. The realization sent a ripple of unease through the palace. This was no outsider seeking chaos. It was someone trusted, someone close. Speculation spread like wildfire behind closed doors. Motives were dissected in hushed conversations. Was it revenge born of quiet resentment? Ideological dissent fueled by disillusionment with tradition? Or a calculated act driven by ambition and personal grievance? Each theory carried its own weight, deepening the sense of vulnerability within an institution long defined by loyalty and discretion. Tensions erupted among royal staff as suspicion cast its shadow over even the most devoted servants of the crown. Alliances strained. Friendships faltered. Every whispered conversation felt dangerous, every glance heavy with doubt. The unity that had once defined the royal household began to fracture under the pressure of uncertainty. Trust, the monarchy's invisible foundation, was now its most fragile casualty. As evidence mounted, the chilling truth became undeniable. The alleged betrayal had the potential to destabilize the institution further. The leak was not merely an act of defiance, it was an assault on the monarchy's integrity, threatening to erode the confidence of a nation already gripped by uncertainty. The stakes were no longer confined to palace corridors. They now echoed across Britain and beyond. When the identity of the suspected insider finally surfaced, it sent shockwaves through the royal establishment. The revelation struck like lightning, shattering any lingering illusions of unity. Though the details remained closely guarded, the damage was undeniable. The exposure restored a measure of control, allowing the palace to stem the flow of secrets and regain its footing, but it came at a profound cost. Reputations were scarred, loyalties were tested, and the realization that betrayal had taken root within the heart of the monarchy left an indelible mark. The scandal laid bare deep fractures within the royal household, exposing tensions that had long simmered beneath the surface. Yet amid the turmoil, one figure emerged with unwavering clarity. Prince William's leadership proved decisive. With measured resolve and unyielding composure, he guided the institution through its darkest hour, restoring order where chaos had threatened to prevail. His actions did more than contain the crisis, they reshaped perceptions of his readiness to rule. But even as stability began to return, a lingering unease remained. The monarchy had survived the betrayal, yet it had been irrevocably changed. The cost of secrecy had been steep, and the scars it left would not fade easily. With the threat contained, William's authority solidified, but the monarchy's future remained uncertain. From reluctant heir to commanding leader, Prince William emerged from the crisis transformed. In the wake of scandal and uncertainty, he became the embodiment of resilience and renewal. With calm authority and modern vision, he stepped into a role few could have imagined. As Britain watched with cautious hope, a profound question lingered in the air. Was this the dawn of a new royal era? The storm that once threatened to consume the monarchy had not vanished, but under William's steady hand, its chaos began to yield to order. What had started as an emergency became a proving ground, and within it the Prince of Wales revealed a leadership forged in both pressure and purpose. No longer merely the future king, he had become the monarchy's present shield, a figure defined not by inheritance alone, but by action. In the silence of uncertainty, his resolve spoke louder than any proclamation. Throughout the emergency period, William consolidated his authority with measured precision. He listened, assessed, and acted with clarity, demonstrating a pragmatic approach that resonated with a nation yearning for stability. His decisions reflected not only an understanding of tradition, but a willingness to adapt it to modern expectations. Where others saw crisis, he saw opportunity, a chance to reinforce the crown's relevance in a rapidly evolving world. Across Britain and beyond, admiration for his composure began to grow. His leadership struck a delicate balance between dignity and accessibility, earning respect from both loyal supporters and cautious observers. International audiences watched closely, recognizing in him a monarch in waiting who embodied continuity without rigidity. His steady presence projected reassurance, signaling that the institution, though shaken, remained unbroken. At his side stood Catherine, Princess of Wales, a figure of grace and quiet strength. Her influence proved indispensable, reinforcing stability and restoring public trust at a time when uncertainty loomed large. Together, they represented unity and renewal, an image of partnership that resonated deeply with the public. In moments of doubt, her unwavering support anchored William, strengthening his resolve and affirming the monarchy's enduring relevance. Gradually, the crown's image began to recover. Under William's stewardship, deliberate reforms and strategic decisions signaled a new era of transparency and accountability. He embraced modern communication, fostered a spirit of openness, and sought to bridge the gap between royal tradition and contemporary society. These efforts reshaped perceptions, presenting the monarchy not as an outdated relic, but as a living institution capable of evolution. Public support surged. Younger generations, once indifferent or skeptical, began to see in William a symbol of transformation, a leader who could carry history forward without being confined by it. His calm demeanor and sense of duty ignited renewed faith in the monarchy's future, positioning him as a transformative figure whose influence extended far beyond palace walls. From a distance, King Charles observed his son with pride and quiet relief. The burden he had reluctantly transferred was now borne with confidence and grace. In William, he saw the continuity of a legacy centuries in the making, a testament to resilience, duty, and the unyielding endurance of the crown. For the king, it was not merely a moment of reassurance, but one of profound vindication. The crisis that had once threatened to destabilize the monarchy became a defining chapter in William's legacy. It marked his emergence as a leader shaped by adversity, strengthened by responsibility, and destined for greatness. Yet even as stability returned and hope replaced uncertainty, the echoes of those extraordinary events lingered in the corridors of history. Yet even as stability returned, the extraordinary events raised one haunting question that history would never forget. Long after the headlines faded and the palace gates closed, the echoes of that fateful decision continued to reverberate through history. The night King Charles handed emergency powers to Prince William marked a turning point, one that reshaped the monarchy's destiny forever. Was it an act of desperation, a masterstroke of foresight, or the beginning of an irreversible transformation? The answer lies hidden in the shadows of the crown. In the months and years that followed, the unprecedented transfer of authority became one of the most fiercely debated moments in modern royal history. It was whispered about in political circles, analyzed in academic forums, and dissected in media discussions across the globe. Some viewed it as a bold and necessary act of preservation, a decisive maneuver that protected the monarchy from collapse. Others regarded it as a dangerous precedent, a dramatic shift that blurred the delicate boundaries between tradition and constitutional restraint. Yet regardless of perspective, one truth remained undeniable: history had been altered. Historians and commentators examined the event with fascination, questioning its long-term implications. Was it a temporary measure born of crisis, or the dawn of a new era in royal governance? Scholars debated its constitutional significance, while royal observers pondered its symbolic power. Each interpretation added another layer to the mystery, deepening the intrigue surrounding a decision that would be studied for generations to come. And still, the monarchy endured. Though shaken by scandal and tested by uncertainty, it emerged altered yet resilient, refined by adversity, strengthened by necessity. King Charles's decision, once shrouded in controversy, came to be seen through a more nuanced lens. To some, it was an act of desperation in a moment of profound vulnerability. To others, it was a visionary step, demonstrating a monarch's willingness to evolve in order to survive. In that duality lay its enduring power, a choice both criticized and admired, fragile yet formidable in its legacy. For Prince William, the crisis became a defining chapter. No longer merely the heir apparent, he was now a proven guardian of the crown, his reputation as a future king firmly established. He had stepped forward when the institution faltered, embodying duty with unwavering resolve. The weight he carried had transformed him, forging a leader whose authority was no longer inherited alone, but earned through trial and triumph. In him, The promise of continuity found renewed strength. Yet beneath the triumph lingered an uneasy truth. The scandal had exposed the fragile balance between tradition and evolution, a delicate equilibrium upon which the monarchy's future depended. It revealed how power, secrecy, and survival were forever intertwined within the royal institution. And despite the passage of time, questions persisted. What secrets remained undisclosed? What truths had been buried to preserve stability? Some answers, it seemed, would never be revealed. Such mysteries only deepened the enduring fascination with the crown. For centuries, it had stood as a symbol of authority and continuity, cloaked in ritual and guarded by silence. It was an institution both timeless and enigmatic, mysterious, powerful, and forever captivating. Because in the world of royalty, the greatest secrets are never truly buried, they wait patiently in the shadows, ready to reshape history once more.